Our guest on This is America and the World is Ambassador Harris Lalacos. Ambassador Lalacos is currently serving as ambassador from Greece to the United States. Prior to his posting in Washington, the ambassador served as chargé d'affaires at the Embassy of Greece in Turkey and as consul general at the Embassy of Greece in Egypt. Mr. Ambassador, thank you so much for joining us.
Very good to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
I have a question that I want to begin the interview. Greek Americans, why are they so passionate about Greece?
Well, they love their country. I guess everybody loves their country of origin, but there is a special link that we see that manages to survive generations after generation abroad. We have Greek communities around the world in pretty much every country. The largest and most important one is here in the United States, and we are very happy that this is the case because it's the live link between the two countries. Two countries which have been allies and friends forever, since your independence and our independence which ensued. And what I want to stress today is that this long-standing friendship and alliance has made us strategic partners. And strategic partnership is a very general term. So at the end of the day, the important thing is to give it content. And on our side, this is precisely what we are seeking, especially with the new administration, now that they are still early in office, that they are receptive to new ideas, especially ideas coming from friends and allies like Greece. And we are determined to add substance to this strategic partnership.
The area in which Greece sits is very strategically important, isn't it?
We are in the European continent, of course, but at the southeastern extremity of it. And we are also a pivotal country in the Eastern Mediterranean basin, which is an area of increased instability lately. And this is precisely where we are cooperating very well with other stable democratic countries in the area, like the Republic of Cyprus, like Israel. We are also expanding our cooperation with the stable Arab countries like Egypt, like Jordan, Lebanon. We are open to suggestions, and we are also cooperating with these countries and the United States at the same time. The goal is very simple but very important, to add to stability and enhance security in the Eastern Mediterranean basin.
So when you're looking at the picture, Europe is important, Africa is important, Asia is important. A couple of things. Talk a little bit about NATO, that piece of the pie, and also this area of Suda Bay, which a lot of Americans might not know anything about. Talk about those.
Well, the defense area is perhaps the area where the relationship between the United States and Greece has been strongest for many, many decades. And this is precisely because there is a mutual interest in this. Apart from being formally allies within NATO, Greece and the United States have formed a bilateral cooperation, defense cooperation, since the aftermath of World War II. So for many, many decades now, we have a very active cooperation in things military and the security aspect. Suda Bay is one of the most important bases, military bases around the globe, I would say. And certainly it's the most important one in the Eastern Mediterranean. And thanks to an existing bilateral agreement of cooperation, the United States has extensive facilities in this naval base, which are crucial for operations in this sensitive part of the world. Our goal is to continue our cooperation and our discussions with the American administration, with the Department of Defense, to see how we can deepen and perhaps enhance this type of cooperation. And we are grateful that this is going to be the case. We had high-level contacts recently in Washington in the month of March with the new Secretary of State, the new Secretary of Defense, the new National Security Advisor, and other high-ranking members of the new administration. We sense that they are very positive to sit down with Greece, discuss things further, and enhance our cooperation where we see that the role of Greece can be helpful to the interests of the United States and the NATO alliance as a whole.
Let us pause on that note, Mr. Ambassador. Say to the folks at home, we are talking with the ambassador from Greece to the United States. He's been with us a couple of years now.
Well, about a year.
About a year. So we are going to talk a little bit more about many things that pertain to America and to Greece. Sit tight. On the other side, This is America and the World. This is America and the World is brought to you by the National Education Association, the U.S.-China Education Trust, and F.Y. Chang Foundation, guided by Ambassador Julia Chang Block, President. The League of Arab States, representing 350 million people in 22 member countries. The Petroleum Group, expertise with integrity in the fields of oil and gas, exploration and production, energy, and infrastructure. The Rotendaro Family Trust. The Embassy Series, uniting people through musical diplomacy, presenting international artists in diplomatic settings. And Ventana Productions, television facilities, editing, and distribution services. Ambassador, if we go off in another direction, and you were talking to the general public, and maybe people who didn't know so much about Greece, what would you say are three things that people should know about Greece? We've talked a little bit about security, the relationship with the United States, very important. What else should we know?
I would start with the special cultural link, intellectual link that has existed between the two nations ever since the American War of Independence, the Declaration of Independence, which was in many ways shaped the intellectual basis for the Greek War of Independence, which followed after a few decades. And this is precisely what prompted many Americans at that time, in the early 19th century, to leave America, go to Greece, travel under very difficult circumstances to Greece, and become prominent Philhellenes, friends of the Greek nation, and help materially, but also intellectually and morally, the effort for the independence of the new Greek state. Another thing that I would like to let your viewers know is that when it comes to the economy, Greece has had, as most people know, a very difficult period, 6 or 7 years, of a debt crisis, which also brought about a continuous recession in our economy. We have started coming out of the woods. We are now back on an upward curve when it comes to the overall economic performance of the country. We are back to positive growth after years of recession. And in many ways, the Greek economy is overperforming, even when we take into account very strict benchmarks set by the representatives of the creditors, including the International Monetary Fund. For instance, the goal for last year for the Greek economy was to record a 0.5% primary budget surplus. Greece recorded a primary budget surplus of over 4%, which gives us enough leeway to start looking into the growth aspect of our economy. This is something that was lagging in the program that we had agreed with our creditors. It was not Greece's fault. But now we see that there is increased confidence in the Greek economy. Recently, we managed, after months of negotiations, we managed to reach an agreement at the staff level. Staff level agreement is very important with the representatives of the creditors. This gave a tremendous boost to both the bond market. The interest rates that Greece is expected to pay went down significantly, but also to the stock market in Greece. We expect that these positive trends are going to continue until roughly before the end of this month, that we are going to have a formal overall agreement which will open the way for more investment, foreign direct investment coming to Greece, and to take advantage of numerous opportunities which are there already.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So you mentioned two. What would be a third?
A third would be to talk a little bit about migration. Again, this is something that everybody associated with Greece when it came to the big migration trends that we experienced in Europe in the last 2 years. Mm-hmm. Greece is the first point of entry of these people into the European Union. And because of our geography, extended coastline, many islands, it's relatively easy for people who want to enter in an informal way, let's put it this way. Mm-hmm. It's very easy for them to enter a country like Greece and apply for asylum, for protection. In Greece, what we are trying to do, and I think that we are overall fairly successful so far, is to strike a balance between a humanitarian approach, which I think we have provided, mm-hmm. and for which we were complimented by the international community, including the United States, and in parallel with this, with the security aspect, because the flows of these people is largely uncontrolled. And once they enter Europe, we have to be extra careful of who everyone is, that they are properly documented and they are properly registered, and we share this information with our friends and allies.
I want to go back, circle back, and hit over the head the financial crisis and also the refugee problem, crisis as well. We hear loans, we hear bailouts, we hear IMF, we hear austerity measures and such like that. This old thing that's been going on since what, 5 or 6 years now?
Yes. Since
how does that affect a country? You know, I'm thinking about everything from unemployment to birth rate to people being so insecure. It must take a terrible toll on the population of Greece. Hmm?
It has. It's an economic setback of very big proportions. Mm-hmm. Greece lost about 25% of its GDP over the course of less than 5 years. Mm-hmm. We are now beginning to see the opposite trend, but the fact remains that in a very limited period of time, we had a tremendous economic setback. Mm-hmm.
What's the backstory of that? Is it just a question of spending more than you're taking in, or that you have? How did that happen?
Well, it was a question of borrowing. Loans were very easy for countries in the European Union and the Eurozone, and banks, our creditors, were not exactly, very careful when they made deals. But this is past history. What I want to stress about your question is where the crisis becomes visible, mm-hmm. To the inhabitants of Greece, to the visitors in Greece, mm-hmm. is with unemployment. Mm-hmm. Unemployment was never a big issue in Greece recently. Suddenly, because of the crisis, it went up to the high 20s. Mm. Now it's in the low mid 20s. It's still very high, but we are working on it. But this is something that brought the crisis close to home for every family, every extended family in Greece. Every extended family has people who lost their jobs, people who had to emigrate again at a time when Greek emigration had stopped. And
So there was an exodus.
There's a new exodus of very qualified professionals, people with university degrees, graduate degrees, who are going to different countries around the world, including the United States, in great numbers. This was not the case during the last decades, and certainly not after Greece joined the European Union.
It has to have also an effect on just the birth rate of people being insecure and worried about whether they can take care of a family, huh?
Precisely, precisely. And this is something that we are witnessing. It's happening. The statistics are there. They show this.
There's a July payment due, is that correct? Will that work out okay, that some of the debt has to be repaid, or the interest? So the IMF and the European countries are involved in that. Does that look positive?
Yes, with the staff level agreement that was reached only a few days ago, this looks very possible now. In fact, it's probable. What needs to happen is to have the formal agreement at the level of the Eurogroup. We expect this to happen before the end of May. But most of the work has been done, and everything, all the elements have been agreed.
So we can keep our eye on the news as far as end of May.
Yeah.
Let me talk about, the same time you're dealing with a financial crisis, absolutely heroic what the country has done as far as the refugee crisis. I mean, absolutely. I mean, Greece should be just applauded for what it was just put on your doorstep in all of these various islands. How many refugees are there now? What would be approximate number?
The approximate number would be 65,000 people.
Wow. And let me just ask a couple of basic questions, Mr. Ambassador. Where do they come from, the countries that the 65,000 would represent?
They come from various countries. Many of them did, in fact, come from Syria.
Syria.
Also Iraq, but then others came from Afghanistan, Iran, Pakistan, even Bangladesh. So it's a number of countries where most of them are coming from. The difficult thing both for the country, Greece, but also for them, individuals involved, is that these people are in Greece against their intentions, against their will, against their plans. They did not come to Greece to stay there.
Yes.
They came to Greece as a transit point on their way to other countries in the European continent, where they have friends, they know that they can find jobs, they can find a place to stay at the beginning.
Are they all seeking asylum in other countries?
Well, now that they cannot move automatically, as it was the case until roughly February last year, when now the land borders between Greece and our neighbors, but also between our neighbors and other countries to their north, have been virtually sealed for this type of migration. Now people are seeking asylum. They expect to be admitted to other countries. This is a long process. And also another problem that we are facing is that the original agreement inside the European Union was for Greece to provide temporary shelter for a number of about 50,000 people. We have exceeded that number, but we have exceeded by far the time frame. These people have been in Greece for about 15 months now without any prospects of immediate relocation, despite the fact that the relocation agreement with other European member states, European Union member states, have been there.
So you got a situation where people are totally in limbo, many of them without hope, and then the conditions in the camp, the Pope has weighed in on this. They're not very desirable situations, to put it mildly. There has to be everything from post-traumatic stress disorder to disease to drugs to everything. God love them, huh?
Well, the situation in the camps is very mixed. There are some camps which are overcrowded, and these are mostly on the islands. And this is because the people who are in these overcrowded camps are people who were pre-screened and were found not to be eligible for asylum. So according to the agreements, they have to be returned through Turkey to their original countries of destination. And obviously they don't want this.
And
so
the relationship, excuse me, Mr. Ambassador, the relationship between Greece and Turkey can't be all that terrific right now for many reasons.
Well, with Turkey, we've had a very interesting relationship for
That's
many,
a
many
lovely
years.
choice of word, Ambassador.
However, when it comes to migration, we found that as of March last year, we have been able to have a satisfactory, I wouldn't say perfect, but a satisfactory working relationship with Turkey on this issue.
But do they still come? Do they still come?
The numbers have gone down significantly, but they still come. Just to give you, the latest statistics, in the month of April, we had just over 1,000 new arrivals. It's not a huge number compared to what we used to have before. On the other hand, these are an extra 1,000 human beings for whom you have to provide shelter, schools for the new ones, food and everything. And to go back to the situation in the camps on the mainland, with the exception of, again, of a few overcrowded camps, there are some others where you have families which are there in very, very decent conditions. But let me say once more that these people are getting more and more restless. They didn't come to stay in Greece, they want to go elsewhere. The other countries are procrastinating. They are not taking as many refugees as they have agreed to do. So they remained in Greece for an indefinite period of time, and month after month, they become more and more impatient.
So when you say impatient, when you say restless, what could happen?
Well, more tension and some, isolated violent acts in the camps. But so far, by and large, the situation is under control, and the Greek population is still very receptive. Compared to public opinion in many other European countries, we have to commend the Greek society. Despite the hardships of the economic malaise, they managed to extend hospitality and to show a human face to these people who are in need.
Well, that's at the heart of Greek culture as it is, wouldn't you say? Warmth and hospitality.
It goes back to the notion of philoxenia, hospitality.
Hospitality.
But it's something that we see that exists in practice now. And the other thing that I would like to stress is that despite the economic hardship and the burden of the migration, the Greek society still remains very solid, very homogeneous, and very stable. Unlike many other countries in our vicinity, we have not seen any signs of social decomposition. And this makes Greece a very reliable partner for the United States, for our European partners and our NATO allies.
We just have just about a minute left on the clock, Ambassador. Thank you for the education. What do you see as your principal mission as ambassador from Greece to the United States?
Well, I started speaking with the strategic partnership that Greece and the United States have been enjoying. So let me finish with this. I think that my main goal here should be to help with the strengthening and the enhancement of this strategic partnership, both in the areas where it already exists, but also in new areas.
We hope to, well, let's say we plan to visit Greece, hopefully sometime in June. And we're looking forward to that hospitality that you mentioned. But we would also like to present all of the good things that are happening in Greece to our audience in America and around the world. Mr. Ambassador.
Thank you very much, and we'd love to welcome you to Greece.
Thank you. Thank you so much. For information about This is America and the World, and to watch all of our programs, visit our website, thisisamerica.net, and look for us on Facebook and Twitter. You can now listen to all of our ambassador interviews on our new podcast, the Ambassador Series. It's available on our website and iTunes. This is America and the World is brought to you by the National Education Association, the U.S.-China Education Trust, and F.Y. Chang Foundation, guided by Ambassador Julia Chang Block, President. The League of Arab States, representing 350 million people in 22 member countries. The Petrolin Group, expertise with integrity in the fields of oil and gas, exploration and production, energy, and infrastructure. The Rotendaro Family Trust. The Embassy Series, uniting people through musical diplomacy, presenting international artists in diplomatic settings. And Ventana Productions, television facilities, editing, and distribution services.